Sin City, that's the name of an exhibition opening tomorrow at Sydney's Justice and Police Museum. It's full of colourful racing identities, corrupt cops and career criminals. Here's a preview.
There was only one thing I wanted out of life. I wanted to be a crook. Not just any crook, but the crook, the biggest, the man with money, power, influence. Working for a living never entered my head.
The early era in the evolution of organised crime is quite interesting. It's really off the back of a whole lot of conservative laws that came in through the temperance movement. Things like drinking, prostitution and access to gambling were heavily restricted. So went through a time when a whole lot of Sydney's favourite pastimes became difficult to get hold of, and to access them you had to really deal with criminals. And so you've got an interesting period. You've got drugs becoming a big issue. People coming back from the First World War often had a bit of drug dependency. There was a big issue with cocaine that was sort of legally available at that point as well. You could buy. There's reports of people buying sort of 4.5 grams of cocaine from a chemist for the equivalent of $16 today, so cheap and easy. That later fell into the hands of some of the razor gangs who battled for control of the drug market after. That also became completely outlawed in the late 20s. And so by the time you get to the 1940s and the Second World War, the drug trade had been knocked off in the mid-30s, but you had this sort of boom time because American servicemen were coming through Sydney, and they tended to be much better paid than their Australian counterparts, so they were here for basically good times. So they wanted to party and they wanted to drink and they wanted access to free and easy couplings as well. So you had all this money floating around, and during that period, a number of some of the key players sort of began to establish themselves. So you had the likes of Abe Saffron with the Roosevelt Hotel coming forward and sorting some of his contacts and some of his ways of operating over the next few years. Then you came through the 50s and 60s, and you had pokies being legalised in the mid-50s, and by the late 60s they were becoming hugely lucrative and attracting the attention of criminal groups as well. That same time you had the likes of Lenny McPherson, George Freeman, Stan Smith come to dominate criminal syndicates and organised crime in Sydney, and right through into the 70s they were fairly powerful.
I'm the toughest man in effing Sydney. I can kill anyone I effing well want to, but I can't get my effing dinner on time. McPherson to his wife.
And by this point, again, drugs, of course, had come back in off the back of R&R servicemen. You had the murder of Donald Mackay in Griffith, which was brought the Calabrian Mafia under the spotlight. In Sydney, we had the Victoria Point debacle in King's Cross with the Juanita Nielsen disappearance and other matters.
Darlinghurst Police, Peter Manning here from This Day Tonight ABC Television. ABC Television, we'd like to inform you that we believe there's illegal gambling taking place at 155 Forbes Street, Sydney.
At where, sir?
155 Forbes Street, Sydney.
Hello?
Did you get that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks very much.
Through into the 80s, when a whole lot of this started to get exposed, sometimes just through how cocky people were getting.
But why? Why do you get blamed for so many things?
Yes, well, I don't know. Maybe you could tell me. You haven't met me till today.
Mr. Freeman, are you sick of being called a colourful Sydney racing identity?
Well, it's better than being called a crook.
Looking at the history of a city and trying to figure out how it's become the place it is, it's difficult to do without sort of taking in every aspect of its development. And one of the most interesting things I found about Sydney is it's got this very rich and very influential, I guess, criminal history, and the way that criminal groups ended up sort of integrating with political and police contacts.
Graham Chook Fowler, the former chief detective at the Cross, delayed from giving evidence after slipping on a milkshake, explained his cash flow as the result of luck at the racetrack. But asked to view a 22-minute surveillance tape, Fowler saw the image that would define the Royal Commission of himself in a car splitting a bribe with his colleague Trevor Haken.
Thank you. I'll just go to the screen. Yeah.
Gary Sturgis, who set up the ICAC, said that Sydney is a place with no memory, and that's something which has certainly struck a chord, and that all of this material has sort of slipped from public consciousness. So one of the main motivations for the show was just to bring some of these amazing stories to the fore, just to perhaps in a way help us understand a little bit about why some parts of Sydney are the way they are, why culturally perhaps we treat certain vices in the way that we do, such as gambling and drinking, and also to have a look at the fact that good policy and good policing have to go hand in hand. You can't have effective policing without having effective policy at the same time. You can't have people trying to police things which are just impossible to police. So I think there's a few lessons to be learned from our past as well. So we're hoping the exhibition will really bring some of those things out and have them discussed in a bit more of a wider forum.